happens when a three-letter acronym becomes so controversial that even saying it out loud can tank your social media algorithm? This is Talent Talks, where we tackle the conversations most workplaces are afraid to have. Our head of success, Emily Alvarez, recently talked with Dr. Lisa Marie Lee, Navy veteran, PhD in education, and founder of LinkedResults. She's known as the evaluator because she has zero tolerance for fluff metrics and calls BS on workplace practices that don't actually work. We're diving headfirst into the DEI debate that's tearing through corporate America right now. Dr. Lisa has watched DEI transform from a strategic business practice into what she calls a bad word. And she's not holding back about why that's dangerous. From SHRM's controversial shift from merit to compliance language to why your organization probably has shadow AI users leaking company data right now, Dr. Lisa breaks down what's really happening behind the corporate curtain. She brings a perspective you won't hear anywhere else. She's someone who grew up all over the world, served in the Navy, and had to force her way into HR spaces that weren't designed to welcome her voice. If you're ready for an unfiltered conversation about what DEI actually is, why it's under attack, and what HR leaders need to do to modernize before it's too late, this episode will challenge everything you think you know. Fair warning, Dr. Lisa doesn't sugarcoat anything. Her final question for every executive will make you uncomfortable, and that's exactly the point. Let's dive in.
Welcome to another episode of Talent Talks. I'm Emily Alvarez, your host, and I am joined this morning by Dr. Lisa Marie Lee. I am very excited to have her on this show. Dr. Lisa is a Navy veteran with a PhD in education and a gift for calling BS in fluff metrics, which I love. Affectionately known as the evaluator, and challenges everything we know when it comes to what really matters in the workplace. So this is a very, very candid conversation this morning about DEI and what it is like to build organizations that are mindful of the actual practices of DEI and what this can mean when done right in an organization, done correctly, keeping employee trust, helping organizations move away from this whole checkbox compliance to actual lived accountability. Founder and owner of LinkedResults. Welcome to the show, Dr. Lisa. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here. I'm looking forward to this open and honest discussion.
Me too.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And tell us a little bit about your background. I know I introduced some of your history, but tell us about, growing up and how you got involved in talking about DEI with companies, because I know this is the main focus of your work and what you've studied. And how did you get into this? I know a lot of this has to do with what you grew up around.
Yes, I like to say that I'm a product of the world. I'm an international child. I was born in Southeast Washington, D.C. Yes, yes, yes. Beauty comes
Love
out of
it.
Southeast. And I'm the daughter of a federal worker. My mom worked for the State Department, what now would be considered systems administrator, but at that time would be viewed as a secretary or executive assistant, only making what about 27,000 a year and retiring off of that. But now we see that those roles are filled by different people, and people make handsome salaries, and even though from that background, it did provide opportunities. So I've lived all over the world. I've lived in Africa, specifically Monrovia, Liberia. I've lived in Guam, lived in Greece, all over, which has probably sparked my interest for joining the Navy. Outside of that, when my mom decided to retire, I moved to West Virginia. So I went to high school in West Virginia. My all
Right.
4 years were in West Virginia. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And, from all the experiences of recognizing that I am different from living all around the world and just being in different spaces, I and then moving to West Virginia where it's a culture shock. I didn't really like high school, so I graduated early. I graduated at 15. My mom signed, and then for 2 years I kind of just hung around. And then at 17, my mom signed me up to go join the United States Navy. And then from there, I was a cook, what most would say, but people forget the cook is what makes everything run. The cook is
Yeah.
the one that controls the system of the military or any space that you're in. If the food isn't good, everybody's pissed off, right? We know
Yes.
everybody's
Yep.
business.
Yep.
So that helped me to recognize that I understand people and I know how to read people. And really touch on what makes people successful, I guess you could say, because the morale is what drives the military, and that is through food. That is
Right.
through relation, because we're all living together, and so we all have to get along. So that starts
Right.
with food. And so understanding that and recognizing how to incorporate that into food, and knowing I did not want to retire out of the military, I had to figure out what kind of job is that? Who does this work? What type of work is this? And actually it closely aligns with what HR should be, right? But at the time, I didn't realize that HR really isn't that. So
Right.
I got out of the United States Navy in 2025, excuse me, 2025. Look at me. Almost
Okay.
2005.
Right.
2005 is when I got out. And the idea first was I was going to get a government job. I was going to follow my mom's footsteps, go back to DC. I wanted to do US aid. In hindsight, thank God I didn't get the job, right? All the government shutdowns, I didn't get the job. There's no more US aid. So who knows where I would be today. But outside of that, I couldn't get a job, just basically a regular HR job. I was viewed as unqualified, but at other times overqualified. So when
Mm,
you hear these things of, oh, thank you for your service, that's all you're going to get when you're
right.
in the military and coming out and transitioning. It's a lot better now with
There's no
all the,
playbook for when you get out. Yeah.
yeah, they had the transition TAPS transition assistant program, but it really was like a handbook, and that's pretty much what it was.
Yeah.
Get out, you figure out, you have a plan, almost everyone does, but plans never go according to what you believe or what you thought. So you're
Right.
mimicking through it, right? And figuring it
Yeah.
out as you go. So of course, continuing my education along the way. Love to read, I love to learn. Thank God for that. Save the books.
Yeah. Right.
um and just not getting into these so-called spaces, these HR spaces, these spaces that help to create change. I had to build them. I had to build my own. So that's where Link Results came from. It's just me recognizing that change needed to come from a different approach, or just a how people work, really called it the modernization of the workplace, right? And it's
Yeah.
shifted throughout. And I first started out just doing resume writing and things like that, which is hilarious because I could get people jobs, but I couldn't get myself one. But I was good
Well,
at.
they have the old saying, those who can't do teach, right?
Yes, yes.
Sometimes that's what happens to us, and that's okay too. That's
Yeah.
okay too.
Most people would be fearful of just even taking that approach because
Yeah.
of feeling that you're not good enough, but I
Right.
I for some reason didn't have that mindset. I didn't give up. And I
Yeah.
was like, well, I'm going to do this. And then I was able to grow my business and morph it into the where it is now, where
Right.
specifically I'm an evaluator and I evaluate HR initiatives, to be specific. And when I say evaluate, I mean deep research, asking the hard questions, teaching people to ask those hard questions. When we think of HR, we think of paper pushers and people that are kind of like a liaison, right? The third
Yeah.
should be the third party between employees and the organization. Sometimes
Right.
it leans one way, sometimes it leans the other way, but either way, that's specifically what it is. And
Right.
specifically, understanding people is a major part of HR, even though it doesn't seem to align that way. But HR really is should be aligned with organizational psychology. You need to be able to understand people to be able to drive performance. So it's very interesting how there's this disconnect with that. And I recognize that disconnect. And as I continue my education, I realized I'm going to have to do this myself. And so here I am speaking to you and having an awesome time.
I love it. No, I that's phenomenal that you recognized that need when you
Mm,
did, because I think what's happened in a lot of organizations, and this is not like a thing that happened just recently, right? Or even um post COVID. This has been going
mhm.
on like progressively for a while, and I would argue this kind of started maybe post 9/11, post
Yeah.
war is really when this started, I believe. Um because then is when we really saw a lot of the fear in this country start
Mhm.
with just everything really. Everything went really kind of radically in one direction as far as locking stuff down, not letting people into our world. Everybody became very fearful. The economy became, everything just kind of went sideways, understandably so. This country went into a very serious war. We were under attack. But what I think the aftermath of that is a lot of these organizations, the cultures of these companies really started to suffer because people were suffering, right? And we couldn't define what that was. And no one defined what it was for a long time. And so things progressively got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And HR, unfortunately, got caught in the crossfire of this in organizations. And so, to
Mm,
your point, they're trying to protect the organization, they're trying to
mhm.
protect the employees, right? And I believe they became sort of and I've said this, the cultural emergency room at a lot of
Mm,
organizations, where they became sort of like the ones that had to triage every problem that came through their door with very little resources
yes.
and very little like to your point, understanding of organizational psychology, people
Mm,
psychology, psychological safety.
yes.
Um, and I don't know that that was ever demanded of them before, at least to this extent, right?
Yes.
And so now they're being asked to do that on top of, open enrollments and benefits and
Mm,
researching and budgeting and trying to increase employee engagements, and it's a lot. It's a lot. But what they also didn't do was make themselves the strategic profit center they could have been by
yes.
looking at how do I start tackling this? I don't have to eat the whole, whale in one bite. I
Mhm.
can start looking at how I can iterate some of this stuff. But there were some other
Yes.
fairly significant challenges that started to come up. And this goes into what you specialize in the way of strategic functions surrounding DEI,
Mhm.
which has now become another kind of hurdle that HR
Mhm.
is going to have to start talking about, because even organizations that are providing them resources like SHRM
Mhm.
are now kind of tinkering with this, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk DEI, right?
Yeah.
Because we're going to talk HR strategy too in this
Yeah.
conversation, and what
Mhm.
HR needs to do to like demand a seat at the table.
Mhm.
But let's talk DEI. Uh,
Yes.
what's going on with DEI and SHRM, and what we know so far about the conversation about diversity, equality, and inclusion in the workplace right now? Because it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah. Um, oh, first and foremost, DEI is a bad word. It's become a bad word. It's become a cuss word.
The dragon everybody ignores is the
Yes.
is the acronym I use for it now.
Yes,
Yeah,
dragging everyone ignores. I mean, even I feel I know we'll speak more technological, but just coming to my mind is even when you use the term DEI on social media or anything, and then you notice your algorithm acts weird. It's the bad word. It's the
mhm,
bad word, and you're moving away, and it's this fear that we're all moving away from that because it's become illegal. It's become problematic. It's become the detriment, right? Even though there's no data that supports that. There's no data to support that it's illegal, harmful, or unlawful. And
right,
that needs to be shouted by SHRM, but it is not. Uh,
right,
and so I've seen that SHRM has morphed. It's morphing in different ways. First, it was the focus of merit, right? Merit was thrown around.
right.
And when you say merit, the first thing I'm thinking of is I have to take a test to prove that I'm smart, right?
Yes, yeah,
When I'm already taking tests, that's why I got this damn degree.
right.
So why do I need to
I
why I
went to school for this.
so
Yeah,
why do I need to take another test to prove
right,
that I'm knowledgeable, if not more knowledgeable than you, because I'm continuously taking my
right.
improvement in education seriously. So when I hear that, I think of that. And then I also think of, the ancestors and us taking a test to be a citizen, when we can't read.
Right.
Even though, people will argue, well, immigrants have to take tests as well. But we can still align with that and assume that the test is fair.
Right.
When statistics tell us that, tests are not always the best way to determine intelligence. It
Yes, correct.
know, so us testing people doesn't guarantee that they are knowledgeable and competent,
Right.
only that they can pass a test. Passing what you tell them is what they need to know, or what you tell them is correct.
Right.
So,
Which is based
whew.
on bias anyway, which is
Yes,
exactly what DEI tries to weed out,
yes,
right?
yes,
So
that's
that's already going
how.
against the very principles of DEI.
Yes, yes, yes. And now moving towards this tone that I'm noticing of compliance. I keep hearing this word and I'm trying to figure out what compliance means. I
Me
really
too.
am. And I see people like, "Yay, compliance." And I'm like, "Okay." So then I have to like really delve deep and see that Sherm is speaking from a legal aspect. But when we say a legal aspect, we're trying to say that DEI was never legal, which is not true. That is false. That is not true, and that's also helping to shift the narrative more that DEI is the bad word, that it's problematic, that it's harmful and unlawful, when
Right.
it is not.
Right.
And then we also have to focus on, even when we looked at the Supreme Court's decision regarding affirmative action, that was in the education system.
Yes.
That was not in the corporate system, and
Right.
EEOC has said there is no evidence to prove that. This is why I keep saying it. They have said it, that DEI is harmful or unlawful. That's
Right.
from EEOC, the government. But for some reason, we're shifting to things being non-compliant.
Right. Well, and I think there is a misunderstanding
Mhm,
severely of what this policy is and what it means. And when I look at legality and policy and this type of stuff, maybe this is being raised by a civil litigator my
mhm,
entire life, but I go back and look at why policies were created in the first place. That's just me, right? Because
exactly.
that's important to have context. And if I go back and look at why these policies were created in the first place, why affirmative action, which is essentially what DEI was born from, um, we look at the civil rights movement, we look at what happened in this country that needed radical action during that time, right? And what's interesting is if you look back during that time, like affirmative action actually benefited white women
Yes.
more than any other group, which by the way, DEI still benefits white women
Yeah.
more than any other group out
Mhm.
there. So, and some Asian people as well, like that, those are the two main groups that it
Yeah.
benefits, and some Hispanics, but very rarely does it benefit, these initiatives benefit African Americans and African and American women.
Mhm.
And so that to me just goes against the entire logic of that the people that are against this terminology and things like that are saying, well, people are going to only get these jobs because of policy
Yes.
or because um they're not actually qualified for these positions based on merit,
Mhm.
based on pedigree or whatever you want to say, but because of the policy creating unfair opportunities, which then take opportunities away from other, let's call it what it is, white men.
Mhm.
Let's call it what
Yeah.
it is, because that's the conversation. If
Yes,
we
that's what
want
it
to
is.
get down to the brass tacks of
And
it.
it's intentional.
Yeah, it's intentional. And I mean, Harvard did a study this year, that their younger generation students regard DEI as being more positive than negative.
Yes.
And being ethically diverse, 36% higher peer performance and innovation in the workplace. when you have DEI, 36% over other companies that don't have this policy or are mindful of this policy. So to me, DEI, I'm talking race right now, like just
Yes.
because that's the like one that everybody goes to, but this policy did not exist just for this. This is to checks and balance bias that we
Mhm.
don't even sometimes know we have as humans
Mhm.
because we all have bias.
Yes.
Because of the way we are as humans, we want community, we crave generally being around people that have common interests as us, common backgrounds as us, because we have stuff to relate to. We can talk about things and, share in common experiences. And we tend to hire that way
Yeah,
traditionally.
exactly.
This
My
was
favorite
put in
saying.
place to prevent
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. My favorite saying when I give my talks is humans are biased, numbers aren't.
Correct.
And our goal is to make those numbers make sense.
Yes. Yes. It's
Mhm.
strategic. It's
Yeah.
not about taking things away from people. This actually gives grander opportunity and more successful opportunity when it works the way it's supposed to. The
Mhm.
problem is we've had people that have bastardized it, right?
Yes.
And
Mm.
also people that want to draw conclusions that make it appear in a light that's bastardized.
Yes.
And that's a problem because now we're not representing DEI in the light in which it really was intended to be executed in. So
Mhm.
now people are like of this opinion that it's something it's not, and that's a misrepresentation, as you know. So
Mm.
what are the dangers of this being misrepresented in this way? Because it's if we do this, this is dangerous territory. To just
Yeah.
pull the plug on this, like some people want to do. What happens?
I think it's all intentional. When you said bastardization, I chuckled because I'm like, the people leading it were born bastards. So it's
I
a
mean,
repeated
it tracks, it tracks.
it's a learned behavior, right? So it's the mimicking of what they only know.
Right,
So that means that I'm gonna take what I feel you don't deserve. So I'm gonna take your job, and then the hope is that you'll go take one of those black jobs that I deem are black jobs, right?
right.
The
Yeah,
brown jobs or whatever those jobs are. You're gonna get out of that job that you're in,
right,
and we're gonna shift you somewhere else because that's what's happening. And I don't need anyone to tell me. I mean, it's obvious if we're defunding, that means that we're wiping away these opportunities, we're wiping away these positions. We're no longer it doesn't exist anymore.
right.
And we just look at the federal government in general, majority of those jobs were black women. And what was it, about 300,000 black women have lost their jobs?
Yep,
Mind you, majority of these people, if they're living in the DC area, they're living majority in Maryland, and Maryland with the Democratic state, black governor, all of this. I mean, race is there. You cannot just try to disconnect the dots.
right.
And of black women losing this amount of work, I think it said, I should have wrote the statistic down. For every 1% of black women losing their job, it takes away, I think, like a trillion from the GDP or something like that.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
we're not only just hurting us, we're hurting us,
right,
right?
right,
And so it's a dangerous thing just in that. And then we look at just the targeting of those individuals and those people. It's a target, but I don't know what that target, what's the end result of that. But when I think of target, I think of danger,
yeah,
and I think of evil, and I think of whew, words that we don't even want to further speak on, you know? I
right.
mean, we think we could even just think of the insurrection, and that can give us an understanding that the guillotine will be rolled out.
Flashbacks to the French Revolution. Yeah,
Yes,
but
yes.
I mean, yeah, no, to me it seems like a bait and switch. Like the
Yeah.
language is a bait and switch,
Yeah.
and I don't know. Compliance to me, that word, I don't know that I'm fond of that word
Me
because
either.
To me,
It's
that word means like fall in line,
Yeah, just like
right?
you said with, the French Revolution, and it always reminds me I forget the movie, what is it? And he's like, "Put them to the question." What is his name? I can't think of his name. My sister would know, she knows all these movies. Uh, but basically how they would go about and, it was the movie with, what is her name? And she didn't eat pork, and the clergy was going around, and he noticed she didn't eat pork, so he automatically assumed that she was Jewish, and then kept her in the prison and all of that. I can't think of the name of the movie. I'm gonna tell you about it, um, after this, but it reminds me of how the policing, right, because of the
Yeah,
compliance. So if you don't eat pork, there's something wrong with you.
right.
Right? So
Yeah,
if you used to work in DEI, something's wrong with you. You need to go over here. You need to go to the gallows. You need to go be questioned, right?
right.
So it's
Or
the
you need to be reprogrammed.
programmed. Yes.
Yeah,
It's the same approach
yeah,
to delve deeper to look for the insurrectionist or whomever doesn't align.
right.
And you see that, you hear these stories of how the selling of social media marketing and all of that to try to control the narrative,
Right,
regardless of what you believe in,
right.
whatever space you're in. You hear these stories and both sides are fearful. Hmm.
Well, I think it's a fear because
Mhm.
don't have we're not being presented accurate information. Again, the
Yeah.
bastardization of the truth. Like no one bothers to go back and read anything or look at
Mhm.
anything. I don't know what the hell they're teaching in schools today, but it's certainly not about this.
It's the past test.
Yeah, and again merit based, right? It's all merit based, which is like again setting us up for like more of this type of
Mm,
like problem, right? We're leading right back into this. And then we're not looking at if we are going to change a policy based on something like this, we're not looking at the sensible
mm,
conversations surrounding it because again, we know that there's been some like they've screwed around with this. Both sides have done this, right? Both sides have screwed around with this. Is not a one side of the problem coin issue. But what happens is like we've had this gross overreaction on both sides of the pendulum. And so
mhm,
nothing can just go back to sensible again. No one's having
mhm.
these, like, we're having a sensible dialogue about this right now. Like,
Yes.
this doesn't happen. And so if we're going to look at changing a policy from DEI to calling it something else, we're not having a conversation about what that even looks like, what that means, what we can do to improve it. Because
Mhm.
if we know there are flaws within it, which we do, then we need to look at improving it, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right?
Yeah.
And
Mm,
that's the issue with what we look at here is let's just gut it, throw it out, and not think about what impact that could potentially have on entire groups of people, which is where this becomes very divisive.
yeah.
And again, compliance, that word, we're not thinking about the fact that that word has connotation
Mhm.
to a lot of people that can be a fairly don't want to say aggressive because that's not the right word, but it has a again like a fall in line, don't think for
Militaristic.
yourself, militant. Yes, it
Mhm.
has a control
Yes.
control
Yes.
based. That's the word I was looking for.
Yes.
Controlling,
Yes.
right? And control to me means fear.
Yes.
And that's the problem. Maybe that's my Jewish, like, paranoia coming
Yeah.
out.
No, it's natural because
But
those are dog whistle words.
right,
So, we're gonna recognize it and hear it, but the
right.
majority don't. They're cheering it, they think it's cool, and it doesn't matter who you are, honestly, it doesn't I mean, I'm a Black woman, but I've seen many Black people cheer it on. I mean, that the head of SHRM is a Black man.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, but they have to understand what they're
Ooh, I said this Black
they
cop.
have to understand what they're championing.
Yeah.
it's this is
Mhm.
a bigger conversation than just we're switching a word
Yeah,
because
and
words have meaning.
yeah,
They
words have
they have weight.
mhm.
we see this
Mhm.
with things that are happening in this country right now. We just had somebody on the far right get killed because of
Yes,
their words, right?
and they're rewriting what those words meant.
Right.
So then it gets even stranger. So I don't
Yeah,
understand where we are because someone can use dangerous words and then how they lived can be rewritten because of how they died.
right.
So now HR feels that they're going to be upholding a form of compliance, I guess.
But that
Like,
again, like then we just go towards more divisive stuff. Like I
yeah,
don't understand
yeah.
this. It seems counterintuitive.
It's more to be written for whatever aligns with their ideology, really.
Right,
That's really what it is. So, it's driven by race, it's driven by the homogenous thought process of us versus them. Anything that works to help push the narrative for their agenda,
right,
rewritten however it needs to be written. Doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. It doesn't matter. Long as their ultimate goal is achieved, which is money.
right. So as far as HR strategy, right?
Mm,
Because I think right now, um, HR wants they need to be strategic in
yeah.
today's world, right?
Mm,
And this is about being project managers, champions of transformation,
yes.
um, not falling into this uh pattern of reaction, right? Being so
Yes.
reactive to things. They have to be supportive in ways. But
Mhm.
when it comes to this conversation and when it comes to this system for trust and belonging and performance in their organizations, um, how can they start diving into creating better systems that incorporate these types of practices um, if they're up against this type of adversity?
Yeah.
It's
First and
hard.
foremost, I think HR should not be like it needs to kind of step outside of a departmental aspect within a business,
Yeah.
which is why it's important to have contract worker or it's not contract workers with consultants, you
Yeah.
know, because
Yeah.
when you're within that ecosystem, you're gonna align with who's paying you as
Yeah.
an
You need subjective.
employee.
Yeah.
You know, you are not neutral, even though you should be. You are not. You're working for the company first.
Yeah. Yeah. You
That's
need an objective viewpoint to come in.
yeah. I
Yeah.
definitely feel that, and I can see that aligning more with that approach as we move further. If we continue with the idea of creating a modern workplace that's about trust, that would
Right.
be the first step. As in, you'd have certain roles within HR within the department, and then other roles without of the department. That's first and foremost. And first and foremost, I mean, just the understanding of HR needs to be rewritten. I mean, it's so archaic, it makes no sense. It's not just administrative. I mean, HR is a technical skill. It is a technical asset. Humans are technical.
Yeah.
Everything we do, is technical because we're the drivers of performance. We're what's making the decisions and ensuring that those decisions are executed accordingly. And so I think that's the next step. And then also understanding what does being technical actually mean? When I say that, I mean, and I walk into a lot of the spaces that I go into, HR doesn't realize that they hold all the answers.
Right.
They're the key. And they just aren't aligning with other departments to strengthen the information that they have. It's right there in front of them. And that
Yeah.
really goes with how HR is being taught within colleges and even just professional development programs and stuff
Right.
like that. Everyone automatically assumes that it's just benefits and things like that. But it's more, it's humans, it's people. And even from there, when we look at associations, they provide these talks and they provide opportunity for people to come in and speak, but not everybody can afford to do those things. I mean, there's small
Sure.
businesses that don't have the means to even help people to attend those types of programs, or people like me, I never was even welcome into the HR space. But now I'm in those spaces because I forced my way into them, and I've
Right.
found a way to use my voice to enter those spaces and try to change that thinking. But not everybody can go about it that way. So it's really up to the associations that are training these people, or at least writing these articles and putting this information out, to ensure that HR is modernized in a way that is human focused and human centered, and how that alignment connects them as a strategic partner, and helping to demonstrate the value of just DEI investments, what they would call compliance and ethics trainings,
Right.
right? And how they do align with the business's bottom line. Because
Right.
we see it in marketing, right? We see it with marketing research. We can say, like, even with Disney and how they were mad because of with Jimmy Kimmel, right? That's
Oh,
the
yeah.
and the decisions that were made, right? It drove the action, which is them pulling out from Disney and Hulu, right?
Yep.
Or even with Target and their approach to DEI, and McDonald's and all of these other businesses, and them making those decisions. The human is an employee, right?
Right.
So it's the same ideology. We can understand that in marketing, why can't we understand that when it comes to HR? And it's pretty simple. I don't understand the disconnect from that, and why HR is not viewed as that strategic partner. I saw a statistic. It said that only about, I think it was 20% of HR personnel are actually even implementing investments that are showcasing the actual value based on human potential. So
Mm.
that's the gap right there, right?
Right. It
We're
is the
not
gap.
focusing on the human's potential, which is strange, because if HR is creating the trainings or implementing the trainings or any type of investment, when they're looking at having contract workers and consultants come in and they're doing some type of investment, it's all for the focus of the human potential. So that shows that there's no understanding of measurement, which also explains why there's only about 30% that actually measure and do evaluation like what I'm doing. So
Right.
even though they're creating the surveys and they're gathering the information, they're not doing and telling the story.
Well, that leads me to a couple different thoughts on that, dealing with HR people like I have in my career. And I think there's a few things that can go sideways with this with HR. And one of the things that I've seen historically with HR is they don't speak the same language
Yep.
as the people that they're dealing with, right? So um if they don't walk into a CFO's office talking CFO language, which is
Yeah.
ROI, if they can't break out how those people metrics and how those um different avenues of generating ROI for the company and different areas are broken out to
Yeah.
show how areas like DEI, right? We have diversity, equality, and inclusion in our company, and this is what it means. If they can't quantify that,
Mhm.
that CFO is not going to get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that goes for the CEO, that goes for anybody else. So you can come into their office and demand a seat at the table, but if you're not going to speak their language, they're not going to listen to you.
Yeah.
And the other part of that is I also believe that there are fundamental problems with the values in companies
Yes.
and the alignment of values in correlation to the culture of the people. And so, and I'm not saying that necessarily people in companies have bad culture. I'm saying I don't think the companies understand their people because they've
Exactly.
never
Yeah.
asked. They've never taken the time to listen to who their people are, what their people want, what's going on. They've just come up with one size fits all solutions and it's like take it or leave it. But the reality is HR and our companies should be treating their employees like their first customers.
Exactly.
And that's the difference. Is if you design your metrics and your programs and all this stuff with empathy, it's a
Mhm.
lot easier to track your people metrics through your workforce trends
Yes.
because you can see a correlation between how your customers view your products and your services and all of that stuff and how your employees view it. There it's almost identical.
Yep.
And so if we're hiring people based on how we would want to treat them as customers, you know you have a good culture and
Yeah.
a good set of foundational values, right? Because your employees are going to be happy to work for you. But I think HR doesn't know how to communicate that. Because
Yeah.
they don't get
Yeah.
that far in the weeds.
Yeah.
So they don't even know if DEI is present in their own company or not.
Yeah.
So it's easy to say, does it really matter? Again, dragon everybody ignores because they don't know if it's even happening in their own company or not. So it's easy to say, oh, we're a diverse enough company. So DEI just really doesn't matter because we're diverse. We don't
Yeah.
need to worry about this because we're already diverse.
Yeah. It
Making a
turns
statement
into.
like that is dangerous.
Mhm.
Just assume it's happening.
Yeah. It's very true. It's it's the rat race, right?
Hmm.
It's what the societal rat race. It's
Yep.
how we've been raised to when we go to school and we're used to sitting at the desk and doing what everyone else is always taught to do.
Yeah.
And then you graduate and you go do the same thing when you finally enter the workforce. It's the rat race mentality that's from the past, right? Of people
Right.
don't matter. And as long as the work gets done, it doesn't matter. And as I was saying earlier, that's why we have to move from this archaic mindset.
Yep.
And even then, when I think of why this HR understanding has never shifted is because HR is more focused on pleasing
Hmm.
than being an individual, and you can't be a strategic partner if you're pleasing. You have to
Right.
be a leader. You have to recognize that, and that starts with also, as I said, with all these associations and stuff and colleges and things, no one's bringing these ideas to the forefront. Like we speak about, oh, you need to be a strategic partner, but
Right.
nobody's explaining why.
Right.
You know, I can go in and explain, oh, this is how you use the data. This is why you need to do it. This is what you already have the tools. You just need to have this different mindset. And that
Right.
mindset is not being fearful of being critical, not
Right.
being fearful that what you say could get you fired. If
Right.
that's the case, then you're saying something right. And it's also even when we go into how we have to change the understanding of what leadership is for even CEOs and people like that, they're just mimicking. They're
Yeah.
mimicking bad behaviors from dawn of time, and they're getting younger, and a lot of them don't even really want the leadership roles that they have. I read an article, a lot of new managers and supervisors and even those moving into executive positions, they don't even want that role because it's so hard to create some form of change, positive
Yep.
change. This
Yeah.
positive change that we're speaking about. Make sure
Right.
I'm clear about that.
Yes. Yeah.
So a lot of younger people from our generation are coming up and they're trying to do these things, but they can't, and they feel as though they can do more by just being at a lower level, which
Right.
is I find is interesting as well, especially when it's harder for your voice to be heard at a lower level.
Right.
But I guess we'll figure out how that works. Things are still shifting.
Right. Well, I think it's also that they see their predecessors,
Mhm.
right, get just annihilated with
Yeah.
no semblance of healthy right life rhythm, right? I
Mhm.
mean, there is like they're burned out. It's like working 60 hours a week on a 40-hour a week salary,
Yes.
and I read a really disturbing statistic the other day that 50, I think it was 54% of Americans that get PTO from their jobs don't even take
Mm.
it because they can't fathom taking it because they'll get so far behind that they're like, I'll just get in trouble or something
Mhm.
will happen. I won't ever catch back up again. Um, and so, there's all this other stuff, or they think even, this is the whole other thing is with, to get rid of this archaic, like transitional stuff in companies. I don't think that even a promotion will give me any semblance of ability to move
Exactly.
up later on
Yeah.
in life because
Yeah.
it
Mhm.
doesn't, they're just going to either get rid of that position down the line,
Yes.
or I've seen the person that was in that position be in that same position for the last, 10 years. They just retired or whatever it is. And like, that's like a no going anywhere position. I'll just be trapped there the rest of my career and burned out and miserable. And like, there's no going anywhere from it. and I'm not going to really learn much from it. Like, that's the other thing. If you don't have a
Mhm.
teaching mentorship culture in your company, like,
Yes. Very
I
true.
don't really give a shit if you promote me or not.
Exactly.
I'm going to continue to learn.
Mhm.
What do I care? If that's well, that's me because that's the type of person I am, and you
Yeah.
too, I'm sure. Like, if I'm not going to
Yeah.
like gain anything from the knowledge of working there and that promotion, why would I want to do that
Exactly.
if I can't grow?
Yeah.
So
It's very interesting.
yeah,
I think there's so many just different approaches with this. It's just very interesting, how sorry, I gotta think.
oh, you're good. I mean, we're
Well,
talking about reimagining the future. I mean,
yeah,
if we
it's
talk about HR owning this strategy,
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot that can happen because we're not talking about inexperienced people here. Most of the HR people I know are pretty savvy and, in fact, got into this by accident,
yeah,
myself included,
mhm,
which has made me more powerful in this role because most of us have a pretty broad understanding of like workplace culture most of the time because we didn't start off in HR. We
yeah,
probably ended up starting off pissed off at HR.
yeah,
That's why we got into this. We're like, they're kind of doing stuff weird.
mhm,
How can we make a difference?
yeah. I think we're in a weird shift because we know that we're focusing on culture. HR is supposed to be focusing on culture. They should be driving culture,
Right.
and but then they don't know how to align culture with the tangible assets in the bottom line of a business, linking that intangible to the tangible. So that's missing within the field, that continuous education and the constant speaking of that. Like I don't ever hear a lot of that, which is why I do the work that I do, and I always am looking to see, are they focusing more on that? You'll see an article here and there, but it's not enough, right?
Right.
But then, so we're on that side of the HR aspect. But then we're on the other side where the companies are no longer hiring. I just saw Walmart said that they're going to freeze hiring for 3 years and focus only on AI and automation.
I
We
saw
knew
that.
this day was coming, and we
Yep.
all know that what that means, right?
Right.
And so now HR is on both sides trying to figure that out, okay?
Right.
So, that's a new form of culture that we're gonna have to create, right? Because we're implementing more technology. So me, I'm not one that's afraid of any technology. I just feel as though we cannot totally eliminate the human, and we
No,
should
I'm the same
focus
way.
more to oversight and retraining everyone to understand oversight and evaluation. Basically what
Yep.
I'm doing, but from whatever technological instruments or investments that you're using, and then also making sure that people know how to use them correctly
Right.
and that they align with what the business actually needs and the actual goals.
Yeah.
So even that, these types of skills HR doesn't necessarily have because that's evaluation, and that's
Right.
leading into you being a researcher. And as I was saying, HR doesn't realize they're technical. So it's a lot of gaps that HR needs to fill so that they are future ready, because
Right.
HR, the more that we're speaking, we're showing that HR is not future ready. And if they're not future ready, how are they going to help to move a company forward, to
Right.
move the modernization of the workplace when everyone's pretty much mimicking,
Right.
and the heads of certain spaces are more focused on compliance?
Yeah, compliance. Well, and the thing is, if you want to talk about compliance,
Yes.
let's talk about compliance in the aspect of like keeping that within legal bounds and
Yes.
compliance. To me, you want to talk about compliance within organizations, let's get real about how many shadow AI users you have in your organization right now that are potentially leaking your company's information out into open AI that you don't know about. Let's get
Mhm.
off the DEI train
Yes.
and
Yes.
start worrying about the technology from a perspective of not being afraid of the tech, right? Because that's not the answer. Like, we have to create a better HR tech culture. Because to your point, HR, you don't necessarily need to know how to be a prompt engineer, or what do they
Mhm.
call it now? Prompt, uh, not an engineer. They call it like prompt
Oh.
context person, context engineer. That's what they call it now. I'm seeing all this different stuff in the stacks now, substacks, and I'm like, whatever. But basically, you don't have to be like an expert builder in this stuff, but at
Mhm.
least know how this stuff functions at an ethical level. You need to become an AI ethicist as an
Yes.
HR person. And let me tell you why. Because they are starting to now pass legislation.
Mhm.
Gavin Newsom, governor of California, just passed new legislation regarding AI and being accountable. If you're a $500 million or more year company annually, you have to show your framework for
Mhm.
compliance of um, if for your safety, your AI safety.
Mhm.
And this was going to be a lot more intrusive on companies, but they scaled it back. But there's going to be more of this happening.
Mhm.
And right now you have employees in your company using AI, and they're putting stuff into it that you don't know about.
Mhm.
And you could have stuff going into OpenAI that you don't want out there because nobody has established an AI policy at your organization. And this is what I mean when I say compliance, like this is the stuff we need to be worried about.
Yes, that's
And
what
yeah,
compliance should be meaning.
yes, and
But
this is where the accountability comes in, right?
yes.
So let's have conversations around shit that matters
Mhm.
and not reinventing a wheel that like is not really the like this is deflection in my
Yeah.
opinion because
Yes.
we have bigger fish to fry here. And
Mhm.
the stuff with AI, like to your point, like we're archaic right now. HR's got to get in on this conversation and start being a champion for this change because it's already here.
Yeah.
It's already here. But you have a choice of like, do I want to potentially stop a major emergency or major problem in my organization that could have been, avoidable had I
Yeah.
just done a little bit of research.
Yeah. And it's just really interesting because we were speaking about HR being a strategic partner. But it's more for them to feel as though they have a seat at the table, but forgetting that that means collaboration,
Yes,
that
you got to
means
talk to other
working with
people.
other departments, and I think I kinda touched on that a little bit earlier when I was saying, aligning with, CFOs and accounting because they have the actual information and how
Right.
those people analytics can match up with how the business is performing.
Yeah.
These are just basic conversations, and as we were speaking on how it's actually funny because these decisions are being made to stop hiring, which is showing that the push is to be more tech and less people. But in order for tech to flourish and be successful, people have to communicate, those soft
Yes.
skills that they like to call it, which are really technical skills. They're not soft skills of us being able to communicate, being able to collaborate. That's the only way that the technology is going to work. That's
Right.
the only way that a business thrives is if all these departments are connecting. And it's just highlighting how businesses are so uncoordinated and really just on life support and
Hmm.
functioning away because the lower level is just doing what needs to be done with a band-aid. They're the
Hmm.
band-aid, but really everything is on life support because no one knows what's fucking going on. No one knows how to go about it. No
Yep.
one even knows who to talk to or how to
Yeah.
get the conversation started and
Right.
afraid to get the conversation started as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting with AI adoption in these companies because you and I know this. There's a
Mm.
lot of companies out there that are chomping at the bit to get AI implemented in some way in their organization, and they're not even talking to their people about what their jobs entail every day and what they're
Yes.
doing, and they just want to adopt it because they're like magpies. It's the next shiny thing to gravitate
Yes.
toward in the room, and it's going to end up they're going to shoot themselves in the foot because they're looking at taking people out of the equation and replacing them with tech too fast.
Mhm.
And it- we shouldn't be looking at it as a replacement of people at all. Because what's
Yeah.
going to happen is if you think about it like that, which we shouldn't be doing at all,
Mhm.
um, if you do that and you rush to do that, you're going to F it all up.
Mhm.
And you're gonna have to then go back and hire people to come in and fix everything you effed up.
Exactly.
So this is not going to bode well for you unless you get in there, start talking to your people, involve them, invite them to the table to be a part of this tech process have them help you build it, have them
Mhm.
help you get involved in it, help you implement it, help you write the processes for it. Like they have to be the ones to champion this for you because
Yes.
if they're not on board with it, if they don't buy into it, you're screwed. I mean, it's not going to go smoothly. And in fact, you're going to probably have way more challenges and mistakes and you're going to find out the hard way like some of these organizations that had stuff happen that cost them millions of dollars. I'm not going to name any names, but we know in the HR space who these people are because it's now coming out. And in fact,
Mhm.
that law in California, if something like that happens, you have
Mhm.
15 days to report it to
Yes.
public record that this has
Mhm.
happened and exactly how it happened so that they can go back and make sure it doesn't happen again, right?
Exactly.
So you have to publicly disclose this now,
Yeah.
which
It's
I
a
think is
very
the right thing to do.
and on a positive aspect of HR and compliance is
It's our new favorite word.
ensuring that, those biases and all of these different, which we already know, the proven within how we go about sourcing and hiring and all of that. That's another reason why HR needs to stand up and speak up and be in alignment as a true collaborator. I don't even like the word strategic partner. I want to say collaborator
Collaborator. Yeah.
because you need to be in the room when things are being built and in the room during the testing and oversight process and truly understanding what it means to be creating a inclusive framework and how you're implementing that within the business and implementing that within the policies and all the investments in technology that you're utilizing. You
Yep.
can't just hire people and then assume that they're going to know what your business needs. It doesn't work that way. You're supposed to be collaborating, and the collaborative partnership should be continuous throughout the life cycle of any contract or anything like that. And I think that also kind of leans back into another task that's tacked on to HR. And it's highlighting how HR really it is under what overwhelmed and underfunded and undersourced. And of course, we're now looking at different ways that technology can help prevent that. But
Hmm.
even then, individuals have to know how to work with other individuals and work with
Yes.
other departments. As I said,
Yes.
the human is going to be the most important part of this modern world. And the technology is just the tool. We're
Yeah.
the innovator, we're the driver of what that tool is going to do.
Yep.
So that's where HR needs to step up and recognize that this tool needs to have the best approach and have the human factor in mind.
Yeah. And the most responsible approach too, because it's incredibly powerful and you need to know what you're doing with it.
Exactly.
So I
Mm.
love this conversation. This has been great. We'll end on one final question. And then, I definitely love to have you back on again for,
Yeah.
a follow-up to this. But for the final question, what is the one takeaway or the one question you would want executives to ask themselves before they replace DEI with our favorite new word, compliance, in their organization?
Whew.
Well, it's a deep one.
I'm gonna say, why not your best? I kind of touched on that. I made a post on LinkedIn a couple days ago. Why not your best? Why are you looking to the least? Why are you intentionally looking to not perform at your best when you expect others to be competent? That's something
Yeah,
that you need to ask yourself. Why not your best?
I love that.
Mm.
That's great. Well, Dr. Lisa, thank you so much for being here. Dr. Lisa Marie Lee, you can find her on LinkedIn. Also, her website, linkedresults.com. You also have your personal website, drlisamarielee.com. And she's got frameworks on there measuring ROI of people, trust and training. You're available for consulting work at companies, right? And then you have tons of speaking topics on AI and HR to evaluation that elevates, tons of stuff. You even have an AI tool on your website, which I can't tell. I was like over the moon. I was like, we're gonna be dear friends.
Yes. Yes.
So yes, I have loved this time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been amazing.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah.
Glad to be here and glad to come back.
Dr. Lisa didn't hold anything back in that conversation. From calling DEI drag and everyone ignores to challenging every executive with, why not your best? She brought the hard truths we all needed to hear. Here's what I want you to walk away with. First, understand that when we shift language from DEI to compliance, we're not making things better, we're making them more controlling and fear-based. Words have weight, and that weight matters. Second, Dr. Lisa's insight that humans are biased, numbers aren't. Our goal is to make those numbers make sense. If you're in HR and you're not measuring the impact of your people's strategies, you're flying blind. And third, her challenge to every leader. Stop looking to the least when you expect others to be competent. If you're going to demand excellence from your team, you better be bringing your best every single day. Dr. Lisa's journey from Navy cook to PhD evaluator proves that the people with the most powerful perspectives are often the ones who had to fight their way into the room. Don't waste their voices. You can find Dr. Lisa Marie Lee on LinkedIn and at LinkedResults. If this conversation made you uncomfortable, good. Share it with someone who needs to hear these hard truths. Until then, remember Dr. Lisa's words. Why not your best? Stop settling for the least when excellence is what drives real change. Thanks for listening to Talent Talks.